is that I hope that as a consequence of what has happened to them, they will be able to look at the rest of the world as humans as well. They will be able to assume that the next victim of a drone attack in Afghanistan may also have parents, may also have community people who will suffer and cry for them as well.
I pledge allegiance
to my African people.
I pledge to develop my mind, body
to the greatest extent possible.
I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people in our struggle for liberation through revolution. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances which weaken me and make me less capable of defending myself, my family, and my African brothers and sisters. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with others in order to bring about change more quickly. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively, rather than wasting time in idle hatred. I will train myself to
never to hurt or allow others to harm my
African brothers and sisters, for I recognize that we need every African man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles I pledge to practice daily and teach them to others in order to unite my people in the struggle for freedom and independence. Uhuru. Uhuru. Welcome to Africa Live. So you're with Daesoon True and Javon G. We got another a little speech that we want to get into real quick. Welcome to Africa Live. Welcome to Two Americas on Africa Live and UhuruRadio.com.
Thank you. I always wondered when I went to church or something. I've always been one to, I'm not just a lead defeated Foreman by a knockout in the 7th round. Immediately thereafter, he walked into the teeth of a monumental decision. He was drafted, and then he refused induction on the grounds of his religious convictions on war.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor hungry people in the mud for big powerful America and shoot them for what? They never call me nigger.
No, we usually go to
they never put no dogs on me. They never rob me in my nationality. Rape and killed my mother and father.
Yeah, we got
shoot them for what? How am I gonna shoot them? Little poor little black people, little babies and children, women. How can I shoot them poor people? Just take me to jail.
While fighting imprisonment for his stand, Ali was also stripped of his title, denied a license to fight in the United States, and denied a visa to go overseas to fight. He was in a much tighter financial bind than most were aware of.
I want to see the world heavyweight champion driving the Volkswagen, guys in the Cadillacs and making fun of it. So I'm working today, hauling, right?
How long is this, Sam?
So I had one day I had to speak in Canisius. Heard of Canisius? Canisius, Fairleigh Dickinson, C.W. Post. 3 colleges and $1,500 a college. Pretty good money. So I broke a wife's piggy bank after I was here about $35 in it. I broke the, no, I'm sorry, $135. I broke the piggy bank to get gas money to get me to the college. And I got enough gas and food money to get the $4,500, the $1,500 later. At $45 would hold me, pay gas bills, light bills, till I get to the next college. This went on until the whole mess was over.
Inevitably, students would challenge Ali on his stand and his convictions. Remarkably, Ali more than held his own against students who had a far better formal education than he.
I'm saying you're talking about me about some draft, and all of you white boys are rating on that to get the Switzerland and Canada and London. I'm not going to help nobody get some of my Negroes don't have. I'm going to die. I'm down there right and fight you.
I mean, when you talk about live, you can just instead of me.
There's a lot of people not Vietnamese, Chinese, or Japanese. You my opponents when I want freedom. You my opponents when I want justice. You my opponents when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
Welcome back to Africa Live. This is Daesoon True along with
Javon G.
Uhuru, and that was a speech from the late Muhammad Ali, who passed away yesterday. And we're just going to talk a little bit about his life and some of the things and some of the importance of Muhammad Ali's life. First, I would like to say how it's amazing the political stance he took in a time where the whole world was changing. Revolution was springing up all over the world. And he was a huge figure. And he displayed how he wasn't going to go somewhere else and fight the white man's war. He understood the conditions of his people, even though he was a famous man and people all over the world knew who he was. He still understood what his conditions were and what the conditions of his people were. And he refused to fight and go fight somewhere else with other brown poor people and things of that nature. So, you know, we're just going to talk a little bit about Muhammad Ali and what he meant for Black people.
Uhuru, I just want to thank Daesoon for really, you know, hitting, you know, a great point. You know, Muhammad Ali was more than an athlete. You know, he was more than, you know, nowadays athletes are used as instruments of imperialism. But, you know, Muhammad Ali was, you know, in his day and time, he was a figure, a instrument used to let the people know about the contradictions of imperialism and how African people are living in these situations. You know, and he took a stance against the Vietnam War that was unprecedented at that time, you know, for Africans. You know, a lot of his development most definitely came from the ideas of Malcolm X and things of that nature. So, you know, he was not just an athlete. He was so much more than an athlete. He was an activist. He was a African loving individual who wanted his, you know, his people free. You can't say that much about, you know, the athletes nowadays. They don't take those types of stances that would harm their careers. You know, Ali was in prison. You know, he was his name was stained, you know, and all this type of stuff because he loved his people so much, and he loved and he hated imperialism so much, and understanding the contradictions of the white man having the Black man go and fight the yellow man, all for the land of the red man. You know, it just was you know, he understood that, and he broke it down in those simple layman terms, which everyone can understand. You know, he understood colonialism, but he made you understand it in terms that you could really, you know, the average African can identify with. That's what made him so important.
And as Javon mentioned, which I can't stress enough, is how influential Malcolm X was to the political development of Muhammad Ali. And he was his teacher. He gave Muhammad Ali these tools he needed to be able to hold his own when he would go against Ivy League white students who would speak about the conditions of the world. And Muhammad Ali will be able to combat those with the conditions of his people based on the teachings of Malcolm X. So I think it's important to understand the role that Malcolm X played in the life of Muhammad Ali and the tools that he gave to Muhammad Ali. Because Muhammad Ali was known as a speaker. He was able to brilliantly put words together. But Malcolm X came along and was able to put some substance behind those words. So I think it's really important when we are acknowledging the loss of Muhammad Ali and his political stance and the things that he stood for, not to forget who his teacher was, and not to forget how important Malcolm X was and what Malcolm X stood for. I think that's very important.
Uhuru, we was talking about Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali's relationship in the Sunday study that we had with Chairman O'Malley this morning. And it was, you know, what Chairman O'Malley was stressed so much is that this was a period of time where revolution was in the air, like struggle and independence. You know, the colonized people were all in motion to against imperialism, against white power, and this is what made, you know, Muhammad Ali at that time so important. So important. You know, he stood for the people. The people knew that Muhammad Ali knew that he was colonized, that the white man was on his neck and was the reason why he was in the conditions that he were in the US. So when he went out around the world, you know, the world under the same conditions of white power dominating their lives, stealing their resources, killing their people, stealing their land, and all this type of stuff, you know, they can really relate to Muhammad Ali. And that period is so important, because these people at that time, Muhammad Ali was not liked by the petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie. He was not, you know, he was criticized, you know, harshly by those, and not followed, and end up really, you know, going against their ideologies and things like that. So, you know, that period made him who he was, and we have to understand that was a hot period of revolution, of fighting back, Black power. You know, this is the first times that you hear these types of phrases, these slogans in the U.S. And that struck a, you know, fear in the hearts of the imperialists and in the hearts of the colonizers. So, you know, for Muhammad Ali to take that stance in that era, you know, is phenomenal. And we get to 2016, and you look on the internet, or you look on all the little tributes to him and his life, and you're not seeing, you know, the fact that imperialism didn't like him, you know, that he was an enemy at one time to the colonizer, and he was a hero to the working class and to those who were hurting. You know what I'm saying? The Africans who was hurting, you know, Vietnamese that was hurting. You know what I'm saying? He was heroes to these people who identified with the same solutions, or I'm sorry, same conditions that we had or have, or, you know, at that time. So, you know, Ali was much greater than, you know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, you know, and all the you know, feel good moments that I'm seeing through social media outlets and just people just sharing different quotes from him and things like that. Ali was a revolutionary, and you know, of course, the ruling class is not going to lift that up.
And not nothing to take away from all these great things that Muhammad Ali stood for, and all these great things that he said. But one thing that should be pointed out is that when Malcolm X was ousted from the Nation of Islam, he pleaded with Muhammad Ali to join him and to follow him, because he understood the impact that Muhammad Ali had over so many people, and he understood what Muhammad Ali could truly be if he had a line that was very similar, if not the same, to Malcolm X's line. And when Muhammad Ali had the choice to go with Malcolm X or stay with the nation, he chose to stay with the nation. It's kind of an example of when, you know, you have someone who's kind of teetering the line, and they choose something that benefits more so themselves, opposed to a selfless act and that benefits all people, like Malcolm X did. So I think that's another thing that we have to keep in mind when we're lifting up Muhammad Ali, not to take anything away from him, but at a very critical time in history, where he could have really been a tool for his people, and to continue to follow his teacher, essentially the person who gave him this political life. He chose to go away and stay within the nation, and not really do the work as if, Malcolm X was doing.
But Daesoon, why do you think that is the case? Understanding that Malcolm was his first teacher, from my understanding, Chairman says that Malcolm saw Cassius Clay in Florida. I think it was Miami, and for a fight, he was fighting what, Sonny Liston, was it?
So.
Sonny Liston, and that was the moment in which Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali. And Cassius Clay was, a loudmouth, arrogant, big, talking good talking, person, but he didn't have any political ideology. And but once Malcolm got to him, it changed, Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and then now you have this revolutionary boxer who is applying, is the demonstrator or showing the colonized people the visualization of guerrilla warfare in the ring. So that's something that has to be recognized, that Ali meant more, boxing or fighting or knockouts to colonized people. He was showing them how to be guerrillas in warfare just in the boxing ring, because Ali was so unorthodox. He didn't follow any rules of boxing and still was the greatest. So I'm just get back to the question. Why do you think that was that Ali decided not to join Malcolm?
I believe that, and based on the teachings that we got today from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, that it was essentially a class issue as to why he didn't go with Malcolm X. Just like a lot of people who has interest in something else opposed to overall revolution being like the solution. So more so, I believe, or if I'm understanding correctly, is that Muhammad Ali decided to stay with what's comfortable, so to speak, and not to really do what it takes to do revolution. Because Malcolm X, he spoke about the difference between a Negro revolution and a Black revolution, and what it actually meant to be involved in revolution. And I believe one of the reasons why Muhammad Ali decided not to follow Malcolm X was basically those things that you can hear in Malcolm X's speech. A lot of people may use the word revolution and talk about revolution without actually knowing what it means. And he also states that if a lot of people knew what that meant, that he would stay on the sideline and not get involved in a fight.
Uhuru, we have Uhuru caller. I think I know who the caller is now. Uhuru, Chairman, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Right on.
So thanks for allowing me to participate in this discussion. I think it's really important, but we did do a study where we discussed the untimely death of Muhammad Ali, and it was a spontaneous discussion, and obviously we could not have prepared or anticipated that Ali would be dying when he did, but his presence on this earth and in our movement was so powerful that it was absolutely necessary for us to discuss it, to talk about it, because we know that masses of our people will be having this discussion. But I think that because it was done on such short notice, it seemed to me, just listening to this discussion, that I did not do the discussion justice in the study that we had. I want to make it clear, again, as you have done, that Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali became a very monumental figure in the struggle of oppressed people around the world in terms of what he represented that horse. And I think that we have to say that he was a very courageous person. He proved tremendous courage, physical courage, in the ring. And he had obviously a very serious courage that we found when he actually took the stance and went against the United States government, refused to go into the war to fight against the Vietnamese people as he did, and he lost his ability with that to make a living as a thing that he did best in terms of as somebody who made a living, that was fighting boxing. They stole 3 crucial years from him by denying him the right to fight, and those were the 3 years that would have been the best years of his boxing career had he been allowed to fight. So all of those things are really important. And I also think it's important that you bring out the fact that that Muhammad Ali is just not somebody who dropped out of the sky. That his emergence as a political and social force, as a political force, as a cultural figure, and what have you, was something that happened at a time of extraordinary struggle of oppressed people and African people in this country and around the world, and oppressed people in general. And not only was there, it was an extraordinary struggle against colonialism. It was a time also that anticipated the development of the struggle of African people in this country, going beyond just civil rights and democratic rights, and we shall overcome and get along with the white people and nonviolence, etc. It was all kinds that anticipated the movement of the struggle of African people in this country towards national liberation as opposed to civil rights. That was important. Everybody in the world was fighting for national liberation. And at that time, when you go beyond just the struggle of African people in this country, the Cubans had been successful in 1959, making the revolution there. They were influencing revolutionary development throughout the entire America, so people were breaking white power, not seeing we can get along with it. You didn't put hands up, don't shoot Black Lives Matter or Brown Lives Matter or Cuban Lives Matter or Argentinian Lives Matter. He was saying 2, 3 Vietnam, and he was saying that about Vietnam because the real highlight of that moment of the struggle of oppressed people against powerful white nationalist, white imperialist powers was a courageous struggle of the heroic masses of people in Vietnam who, for a period of time, carried the weight of the whole oppressed world on their shoulders, and who had said that a small country can defeat a big country, that a nation can defeat a powerful nation. This was an era of an incredible moment, and who had demonstrated concretely that it could happen, who had initiated what people refer to today as unconventional warfare, the guerrilla, the force where you have a weaker entity going up against a more powerful entity, who followed the edicts of Mao Zedong and others who taught guerrilla warfare, that said that the guerrilla, that's always representative of the oppressed, never would try to on its own terms, that would never try to fight a powerful enemy on its own terms, that when the enemy attacks, you retreat. When the enemy retreats, you attack. In other words, what you do is that you float like a butterfly and you sting like a bee. So this was what was happening in the real world. I mean, the real world had a period of oppressed people rising up. And not just rising up, but overturning relations that existed in the world, inside the African nation, a whole nation of people. There's different class forces. And that was true in Vietnam. In Vietnam, you had a situation where the whole Vietnamese nation was being oppressed. But within that nation, you had petty bourgeois forces, you had people who worked with imperialism in order to get advantages for themselves on the one hand, and then you had the Vietnamese Workers' Party led by Ho Chi Minh and other incredible revolutionary figures that understood that you had to go beyond simply winning favor with the white man or white power, and that you had to go beyond just getting a flag and form of independence, and you had to have the power to transform the society itself so that the people who do all the labor, do all the work, now come into possession of the consequences of labor and work, and that's the working class itself. And the Vietnamese were struggling to take the movement beyond just independence, and all of those kinds of contradictions were concentrated in the presence of Muhammad Ali. And this is why he was so beloved, not just because he had boxing skills, but because with that platform that was provided by his success as a boxer, he was able to win, to articulate the kind of thing that's good for the masses of the people. Now, Malcolm X was not somebody who just came to Miami and saw him fight or met him in Miami. Malcolm X lived with him. Malcolm X was with Muhammad Ali all the time. He was preparing for this incredible fight with Sonny Liston. He was an incredible influence. He provided Cassius Clay then with the kind of confidence that he could win. He could beat this guy because Cassius Clay had even talked about a fear of Liston and how this was a powerful guy, and it was Malcolm's influence there. Malcolm was also tutoring him and bringing him into the Nation of Islam while people were not aware of that, even though every now and then you see a comment by some reporter that there was Malcolm X hanging around with Ali, etc. in his training camp. So what we saw is a convergence of a lot of different forces. And when we talk about the significance of how Ali fought, because Liston was a powerful fighter, and Liston was backing up people all around, and the whole notion that this kid, Cassius Clay, was going to get in the ring and defeat Liston, that was extraordinary. And then what Clay did, of course, the guy who trained to be Muhammad Ali, what he did was try the classic guerrilla war and unconventional war, with the Sonny Liston. And Liston ran into something that none of them ever anticipated: the speed of Ali and the fact that Ali fought on different terms and didn't fight the way they were accustomed to being fought. Is what made Ali a formidable enemy, opponent of anybody in the ring. So he transformed the entire thing, but it happened within a particular context. And now, of course, what Ali did, he announced that he is a part of this movement that's renowned because of Malcolm X. And this movement that talks about do for self, that talks about the white man is the devil, that talks about colonialism. And Malcolm, of course, was the one who was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who was making serious criticism of the struggle for rights that was being led by the African middle class in the form of King and other forces like that. And he was saying that to all of us that there's a difference in the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution. You got to look at a revolution. What are its objectives? What's the motive of the revolution, and how do you make it happen? Malcolm was saying that the only way to make it happen is through bloodshed, and if you got to be talking about land, and you can't be talking about just integrating into with the white man sitting on a movement to sit on the toilet next to white people is crazy. So this Malcolm's politics was representative of the politics of the colonial people all around the world. It was representative of the kind of politics that was emerging within Nkrumah in Ghana, who had contributed to the development of a movement that was bringing in Patrice Lumumba from Congo. The masses of people rising up and moving away from accommodating white power, trying to be accepted by white power. And when Ali, using this platform, and you got to remember that when we talk about boxing, that that boxing was a situation that they, for years, were not even going to allow an African to struggle to fight for a heavyweight title since Jack Johnson. And with Jack Johnson, because he was somebody who taunted white power, who had no respect for white power, and he would humiliate white fighters, and you would have what Johnson was fighting white people just to see Johnson get, just to have Johnson be killed, and sometimes themselves threatened to lynch Jack Johnson. So because Johnson was going in the boxing arena, you went many years before a heavyweight could fight again, and then this time for a championship, and this time it was somebody who they thought they was knowledgeable, who would not say the wrong things, etc., who was so good. And of course, after that period of time, you see fighters, often tied to the mob, things like that, fighters who were inarticulate, who could not and had no intention of representing the interests of African people, who followed, and then until they got this guy who they fought. There was no intention that Ali was going to beat Liston. It was impossible for Ali to defeat Liston, just like it was impossible for the Vietnamese to defeat America. Ali gets in the ring, of course, and he does get in the ring and fight and defeat Liston. He now defeats Liston as somebody who represents black people, not America, but black people. And this was a critical thing. And because now Ali has taken a stance that turns out to be an anti-colonial stance that defies the kind of civil rights loyalty of the African people would have to America, saying that now we're fighting for ourselves, and then he refuses to be drafted, which was not a small thing. Because what you need to know is that all colonial powers have always used those they colonized to fight their wars for them. When the French first engaged, when the Vietnamese people rose up against French colonialism in the 1940s and 50s, the war that was waged against the Vietnamese by France had 71% of the people who fought that war against the colonized people of Vietnam were colonial subjects of Vietnam, of the French themselves. They were from Algeria, they were from Senegal, they were from all these other countries that were controlled by France. So if France doesn't have colonized people fighting for it, France doesn't stand in a chance. So 71% of all the people who fought from France against the Vietnamese were not white people. They were colonial subjects. And then I have read that 65% of the people who were on the front line of the U.S. Army, the U.S. military fighting against the Vietnamese to keep the Vietnamese colonized, well, now you got this man, Muhammad Ali, who's saying, I'm not going over there to fight no white man's war against yellow people to keep the land that was stolen from the red people. I'm not going to do that. This is my oppressor. I'm not going to go and fight that. And that became a critical thing for them. And so they used the power of the colonial state to keep Ali from fighting anywhere. And they succeeded in doing that for a period of time because of the conversion of these kinds of contradictions in the world. And this is the part of what gave Ali his significance. Then later on, of course, as you know, there was a split in the Nation of Islam. Well, Malcolm went one direction, and if you notice that you've never heard anybody else from the Nation of Islam talking about the revolution.
Nope.
That was Malcolm X. It was Malcolm who talked about the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution, and but nobody else. And so Malcolm was trying to go someplace beyond just the question of national liberation. He's now talking about winning liberation, and he's not beginning to grapple with the question of socialism and things like that. And also, he was talking about it was not good enough for the nation simply to have a position that black people are being oppressed, but the nation has to engage in actual struggle, so that the Nazis, African people in this country were doing at the time. And so there was a split in the nation, and Malcolm went one way, and there were other people that Muhammad Ali refused to go with Malcolm, even denounced Malcolm, and Farrakhan didn't go with Malcolm. They all stayed in a different place. The nation stayed one place, Malcolm in another place. Malcolm gets assassinated because he's going trying to follow the revolutionary trajectory beyond revolution is going beyond just the question of discussing national liberation, actually trying to wage that struggle. Malcolm is right. The Black liberation of the 1960s is defeated. Members of the Black Panther Party assassinated, Malcolm assassinated, King assassinated, the movement crashed, and now we find ourselves at a place that is clean, that is like the civil rights movement from back in the day. And so where we were talking about, Malcolm was talking about the battle of bullets. You didn't hear anybody else talking about that. You had the Black Panther Party talking about political power comes from the barrel of the gun. This is what Mao Zedong China was also saying. Was talking about Black power. That was a whole different era that was crushed. And now we're back at a place where we're not talking about barrel of the bullets, Black power, political power comes from the barrel of the gun. We're saying, oh God, please let the good white person get elected president this time. We're saying, feel the burn. We're saying all out for Hillary. We're saying hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter. And what I'm saying is that the movement has been pushed back to a pre-Ali era. Ali could not go with Malcolm, did not go with Malcolm, ended up denouncing Malcolm, and this does not diminish Ali's stature and its significance at a particular time in history, any more than it diminishes the stature and the significance of the Nation of Islam at a particular time in history, because they were critical in that they were discussions, they were talking about national liberation, where at a time where the white man and the white power only wanted us sucking up behind and talking about we shall overcome, let's integrate, let's accept everything they do nonviolently. And the other thing I want to mention is, it's not just a question of Ali going against this quote-unquote teacher, because somebody can make the same argument if it were Malcolm X winning against his teacher, who was Elijah Muhammad. The difference is that Malcolm X, the political difference is that Malcolm X wanted to go beyond the question of simply talking about national liberation, or it wasn't characterized as national. That's what Malcolm was able to do. But the nation was quite clear that, do for self, the white man is the devil, that we have to free ourselves as a people, whatever that meant. Malcolm went beyond that, and the nation could not make that trajectory. So Malcolm went beyond where his teacher was going. I'll let other people debate whether the teacher was correct or Malcolm was correct. Obviously, I'm a Malcolm. I'm someone who follows Malcolm. And then in this instance, Muhammad Ali had the option of going with Malcolm toward where the Vietnamese were going. Towards where the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee tried to go, which is a man for Black power, and actually being engaged and struggling to win that. And he chose not to do that. And this is where we see the contradiction. When we say the question of class, not because, Ali made tremendous sacrifices, not because he's not talking about money and stuff like that. He lived, as you heard in the clip before this discussion, that he lost all kinds of money. He's struggling trying to make it. So the class question here revolves around who would lead the struggle for national liberation. Would it be the African petty bourgeoisie? For whom liberation means something entirely different than it does for the masses of Africans and working in poor people and the oppressed people around the world. Because the national liberation can be accomplished from the perspective of the petty bourgeoisie simply by removing all of those things that white power imposes on the petty bourgeoisie to keep it from being successful. It cannot get the kinds of resources, it cannot it can't, even in our own community, some of the white man owns the stores, now the Arab owns the stores, the Jews own the stores. We can't have our own stores. We got a government that places all kinds of restrictions on what it takes for us to work, even give us a contract for this or that in our own communities, etc. This is the stuff that raises the ire of the national petty bourgeoisie. For the white man dominates in a very specific way. The imperialists forced the imperialists to retreat to neo-colonialism because the masses of African people have become so conscious that they could not rule in the same way, so they had to use black people, brown people, to carry out the mission of white power in their own faith. And so a section of petty bourgeoisie could be satisfied with that. But for the African working class, then we had to go beyond that, and working the power of the working class, leading in the struggle for national liberation, would also result in the African workers and poor peasants who produce all the value in society collectively coming to own the value in that society. So we have national liberation now under the leadership of the working class. And that's when we talk about class, because the petty bourgeoisie as a social force cannot go beyond simply what they call liberation, just the flag, just the Constitution, but you end up more or less simply replacing white power with black faces. And that was not satisfactory, and it was never satisfactory. And that's what we mean in terms of class. So, I know I've talked a lot, but I just wanted to intervene to that extent.
Chairman, that we really appreciate the intervention, because that's pretty much what we got on the Sunday study this morning. Just the breakdown, in-depth breakdown of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X's relationship, and I just want to unite with what you're saying and what you're raising, and I'm glad that you came on and clarified the class question and things of that nature. But I do have a question. But before I ask the question, I want to give the phone number to Africa Live on Uhuru Radio. You can speak live with the chairman, ask a question, whatever comes to your mind. It's 727-565-1599. Again, that number is 727-565-1599. And Chairman, my question is basically the same question that I had on a Sunday study this morning at 8 a.m. I asked the question about just the how Muhammad Ali was such a the stance that he took politically, even though he had so much to lose when it came to his career as an athlete. And I asked the question, why is it that so many athletes nowadays are not inclined to take the position of
the community and what have you. And I watched them clash Tyson, who didn't act like the white man his white father taught him to act, who lost all of his manners, even convinced him that there was something wrong with him, they even had him on drugs and all of this kind of stuff. And I watched them crush this guy. And but Tyson was fierce when he when he was representative of the African working class coming out of Brooklyn,
Bronx.
and so I'm saying that now we have this place where they crush the African liberation movement, and it's just now in a period of resurgence. That's what the African People's Socialist Party means in this era. The resurgence. It's a back to overcome the defeat of the revolution. So now you don't see people acting like the Muhammad Ali anymore. They've gone back to the Jesse Jackson kind of Al Sharpton kind of expression. It's about silver right, not silver right. It's about the money, etc. It's to cripple whatever dollar kind of politics that influences the consciences of our people and not the revolution and not the aspirations of the people. And even around the world, you don't have the same kind of Vietnamese-like influence, so that you have situations like Venezuela and other places around the world, but they're not as much progressive as they are try to be. They're not talking about being part of a revolutionary movement as we saw in the 1960s. So the whole social political dynamics are different today, and the African athletes only feel loyalty to themselves, and they are afraid in some instances of challenging the setup that has been established for them. There is no social movement that challenges the status quo yet that's out there, because unlike with the period of Muhammad Ali, where you saw a real social movement that was clear, and even if it was petty bourgeois led on what its directions for, just saying Black Lives Matter or hands up, don't shoot does not inform anybody about anything. And so athletes who can be sympathetic with Black Lives Matter and actually can put it on their jerseys and things like that don't have to have a commitment beyond that. And so that's part of what the difference is. I know over-talked it, but that's part of what the difference is. Really.
Uhuru, Chairman, I don't think you over-talked. I think you were very crystal clear in your explanation. Again, the number to dial if you want to talk to Chairman O'Malley or one of us is 727-565-1599. Jason, you wanted to say anything?
Yes, Uhuru, Chairman. I just want to appreciate you for coming on and clearing up a lot of things and really expressing the importance of Muhammad Ali and in that particular point in time period, and also tying it into this particular time period which we are now, and really answering a lot of questions that people may have. I just want to appreciate you for that.
Uhuru.
Listen,
go ahead, Chairman.
Let me make this comment, because when we talk about Ali and how so much of a historical moment was concentrated in this personality, I'm not trying to be mystical or anything like that. This guy was an extraordinary fighter, and he was because you saw his physical courage in the boxing ring. I mean, when he was supposed to collapse in the face of George Foreman, when he hadn't boxed, they took 3 years of his life, took one fight with Jerry Quarry, and then he comes back and he fights Joe Frazier. I mean, he saw serious courage there. There were contradictions around Ali too, particularly around the way he treated Frazier. And at some moment other time we can talk about that. But the guy was extraordinarily courageous. And when I talk about how a historical moment was concentrated in this personality, obviously I'm talking about the national liberation struggle that was going on around the world. Ali got defined and oppressed. He wouldn't go to fight against, he wouldn't be one of the 65% of the Africans on the front line fighting against the forces who were fighting against colonialism themselves. So he wasn't going to participate in it. He broke that. So that was part of what we're talking about, a moment being concentrated in Ali. The whole, beyond the civil rights movement, that was it. And we're also talking about, when you talk about Ali's fighting technique, his skills. When I first heard about Ali, all of the people were commenting, the boxing geniuses and what have you, that Ali would never really be a good fighter. He might be entertaining and what have you, but he breaks all the rules. Hello?
Uhuru, Chairman, we have a caller. Uhuru, Chairman, we have a caller.
Okay.
So, caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Uhuru, this is Liz in DC.
Uhuru, Liz, how are you? Welcome to Africa Live. What's your question? What you want to say? You want to talk
I
to?
understand that Bill Clinton. I wanted to ask the chairman still here.
Yes, he is.
Yes, I am.
Okay, I wanted to ask the chairman. I understand that Bill Clinton is speaking at Muhammad Ali's funeral, and I don't know if if the chairman can speak to what the relationship might be between Bill Clinton and Muhammad Ali. I'll take my answer.
I'm glad to raise that. I think everybody should be incensed and offended by the fact that Clinton is doing that, but you're making part of the point that I'm making. Our revolution was defeated. When the revolution was defeated, and Ali went a different direction than Malcolm X. And in fact, the Ali that was the one who ain't gonna fight the white man's war, himself changed and became a kind of ambassador for America that went various places around the world. And in many ways, he became the good Muslim. After 9/11, Ali was one of the biggest weapons that the U.S. imperialism was able to use all around the world. He was like an ambassador for U.S. He was the good Muslim. As you know, the United States was looking for, and today even demand that the Muslims distinguish themselves by being good Muslims and not those Muslims that hate the white man, that hate America, that hate colonialism and that kind of thing. So Ali changed, and because he did not make that trajectory, he did not make that transformation and move toward the same direction. And I'm not sure Ali would have been opposed to it, Clinton being there, even if he were alive. So, and I should be opposed to it because the fact is, the era of struggle has opened up, and many of us didn't change, etc. We can still love Ali. We can still love what he represented at that moment in history. We can still love his skills. We can still love his defiance at that moment in history. But with the defeat of the revolution, what happened is that Ali himself was transformed and changed and became a part of the legal, if you will, movement in this country.
Uhuru, caller, you have anything? Oh, caller's going. All right, thank you. Thank you, caller. Appreciate that. Dexter, you want to speak on anything? No.
No, just appreciating this education that we're getting from the chairman. I think it's much needed.
Uhuru. Chairman, you was in the middle of a point before the caller came in. I don't know if you.
The point I was working on was the whole thing about how at a particular moment you can find concentrated in an individual, that historical moment. And more than with any other, we saw that with Stokely Carmichael and Black Power. We saw that with Huey P. Newton, with the whole question of armed struggle inside this country. We saw with Muhammad Ali. And these often are fleeting moments. But that when Huey was fleeting, with Stokely was fleeting. I mean, because beyond 1960s and what have you, you'd be hard pressed to see, where that went with Stokely. But with Ali, it was really interesting because I was mentioning Ali's fighting style. That all of the people who were experts in boxing saying could not be successful. And but what has happened is the form of struggle of the oppressed that characterized that moment that the imperialists refer to is irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare. That form of struggle that was being employed by the people in Vietnam against the United States was effectively what Ali was demonstrating in the boxing ring. And, where, the guerrilla, which is usually a weaker, smaller force, never confronts the oppressor on its own terms. You hit and run. Your enemy advance, you retreat. The enemy retreat, you attack. The enemy ties, you attack. And Ali fought in the ring. He didn't say, I'm going to fight like the gorilla. He was floating like the butterfly and stinging like the bee, which is the same thing as guerrilla warfare. I'm just saying much of a historical moment, independent of his own will and consciousness, was concentrated in this man that we are talking about that was called Muhammad Ali.
Who, Chairman, I really appreciate this because, like I was saying earlier, the media and just, everybody is just out there putting this spin on Ali and not remembering that he was, against colonialism. He took a stand against the white man, and they're just putting out this narrative that, kind of what they did to Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, and all the stuff that unites him with imperialism, with white power, and not a threat. And I just really appreciate you for giving us this in-depth summation about Ali and his political stance and his life. So, I just want to appreciate that.
Well, I want to get off, but I want to say that if the Ali who said, ain't no Vietnamese ever called me nigger, and lived up to now. If the Ali who said that I'm not going to go no thousands of miles away to fight some brown people, some yellow people, some poor people. That's what he said. Them poor people who ain't never did nothing to us, who are being bombed, their children are being murdered by the United States government. If that Ali were alive, he would be denounced by Barack Hussein Obama and all the white people who are now trying to hold him up as this wonderful person because they have captured him. They've captured what he meant, captured the definition of it, and generally speaking, the African liberation movement, or what poses as the Black liberation movement, is encompassed in terms of analyzing the period, taking Ali outside of beyond just who he was as an individual person, and to sum him up as a part of a historical moment that was very critical for our struggle. Because they can love Ali now, but what Ali stood for, they don't talk about. They don't love that. And they wouldn't love it today if that Ali were alive and they had to deal with it. Of course, that Ali is alive, and he's alive in the African People's Socialist Party and in the Uhuru movement, and we haven't retreated a single iota. And so I just think that that's something that we need to remember and understand, and love Ali because he was a great boxer, because he was heroic and skillful. But we love Ali for what he was. When he stood up against white power in the name of his people and the oppressed peoples of the world. That's why we love Ali. They love Ali for what they forced him into after they killed Malcolm X, destroyed the Black Revolution of the 1960s, and changed the terrain, the political terrain in this country and around the world. They can love him now. We love him for who he was when he was genuinely a revolutionary figure because of his stance in defense of the struggles of Africans and other oppressed peoples around the world. That's the Ali that we shall preserve forever. And Bill Clinton can go and eulogize his son and say whatever the hell he wants to say. He's a blood-sucking terrorist cracker, Bill Clinton. That's who he is. But Ali shall forever be ours. But the Ali that we adopt, that we respect, that we love, that we will venerate, and we will never allow them to take from us, is that Ali who was a product of a relationship with Malcolm X and who stood with the oppressed peoples around the world.
Uhuru, Chairman. And on that note, this is Africa Live. I'm Javon G.
And they soon true.
We're going to head into a little break. So on the other side of the break, we'll come back with Two Americas. Uhuru.
You're listening to WhoRadio.com, voice of international African.
So you coming back live or you want to clip?
Let's go to a clip. Yeah. We need to regroup.
You want the Black Jesus?
Yeah.
Information, ideas, and reality. That's what the Burning Spear newspaper offers you each month. Think about government, society, entertainment, and the world around.
Yeah, so
The Burning Spear
get back
is
to
the
talking
oldest
about,
Black power newspaper that
Two
exists.
Americans.
Your
You want to get a topic introduction?
$25. Get the insight and perspective that the mass media machine cannot and will not deliver. Read dynamic articles on the most pressing issues affecting the lives of African workers in the U.S., Africa, and around the world. Each month, you'll find real political analysis of the crisis of parasitic capitalism, insight into world and local events, and a focus on the realities and struggles in the heart of the hood, expressing the vision and voice of the African working class. Uncompromising truth, unwavering focus. The Burning Spear newspaper. This is Black Power in the 21st century. Subscribe today and don't get fooled again. Order your subscription now. Go to burningspearmarketplace.com and click on Spear. That's burningspearmarketplace.com and click on Spear. Uhuru.
Things get much better, but I always wondered when I went to church on Sundays. I've always been one to, I'm not just a boss. I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying, I ask questions, I travel these countries and watch how people live. Yeah. And I always ask my mother, how come is everything white? I said, why is Jesus white?
Okay.
Why
How much time we got on this?
is the Lord something all white?
Is that too much?
Angels are white.
Too much. They keep ending on video.
Mary, even the angels. I said, Mother, when we die, do we go to heaven? She said, naturally we go. I said, what happened to all the black angels that took the pictures? I said, oh, I know. If the white folks was in heaven too, and the black angels were in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey. I said, listen, you put some in there. I was always curious. I always wondered why I had to die to go to heaven before I couldn't have good cars and good money and nice homes now. Why do I have to wait till I die to get milk and honey? And I said, Mama, I don't want no milk and honey. I like steaks and I said, milk and honey is a laxative anyway. They have a lot of bathrooms in heaven. So anyway, I was always curious. I always wondered why. You know, Tarzan is the king of the jungle in Africa. He was white. I saw this white man swinging in Africa with a knife on hollering. Oh! You all see Tarzan over here, Tarzan? And all the Africans, so he's beating them up and breaking the lion's jaw. And here's Tarzan talking to the animals. And the Africans been there for centuries, and he yet can't talk to the animals. I always wondered why Miss America was always white. All the beautiful brown women were beautiful suntans, beautiful shapes, all type complexions, but she always was white. And Mr. World was always white. And Mr. Universe was always white. And then we got some stuff called White House cigars, White Swan soap, King White soap, White Cloud tissue paper, White Rain hair rest, White Tornado flow wax. Everything was white. And the angel food cake was the white cake, and the devil food cake was the chocolate cake. I said, Mama, why is everything white? I always wondered, you know, and the president lived in the White House. And Mary had a little lamb, his feet as white as snow and Snow White. And everything was white. Santa Claus was white. And everything there was black. The little ugly duckling was a black duck. And the black cat was the bad luck. And if I threaten you, I'm going to blackmail you. I said, Mama, why do they call it white mail? They lie too. I was always curious. And then, this is when I knew something was wrong. Won the Olympic gold medal in Rome, Italy. Olympic champion, the Russian standing right here, and the Pole right here. Is Poland considered a communist country?
Yeah.
I'm defeating America's so-called threats and enemies. And the flag is going dun 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 dun. I'm standing so proud. Dun 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 dun. I'll whip the world for America. Dun 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 dun. I took my gold medal, thought I'd invented something. I said, man, I know I'm going to get my champion of the whole world, Olympic champion. I know I can eat downtown now. And I went downtown that day, had my little medal on, and went to breakfast. So that time, black things weren't integrated. Black folks could eat downtown. And I went downtown and I sat down. I said, a couple of coffees, hot dog. They said, we don't serve Negroes. I said, man, I said, I don't eat it either. Just give me a cup. I said, I'm going to win the gold medal. 3 days ago, I fought this country in Rome. I won the gold medal, and I'm going to eat. The manager, her telling the manager. And he said, well, I'm not the man that he's got to go out. Anyway, I didn't know he's going to go out. I had to leave that restaurant in my hometown. When I went to church and served in their Christianity, then it opened the walls. Just wanted to go there. Couldn't eat downtown. I said, something's wrong. No, I've been to Boston.
Yes, I was going to ask you about what attracted you to
the truth, the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, how black people have been brainwashed, how they've been taught to love white, hate black, how we've been robbed of our names in slavery, we were robbed of our culture, we were robbed of our true history. So it's like it's a walking dead man. So we got black people in an all-white country, and they don't know nothing about themselves. They don't speak a language. They're just mentally dead. And this is happening all over the world. The first place that will rise will be the black people in America and the rest of them. So I was one who heard the truth. And when I heard the truth about my name was not Cassius Clay, I know a black man in America named John Hawkins. Now, you know who John Hawkins was. He was a slave trade from England. But the white people at that time, one had 5 slaves, and his name was Jones. They would be called Jones property. If you was auctioned off to Mr. Smith, your name is Smith, identifying you as property of certain masters. So now that I'm free, now that I'm no longer a slave, then I want the name of my ancestors, Muhammad Ali. Like a Chinese, how the Chinese look named Robert Smith? How would a German look named Edward Goldberg? Jewish name. So right here, we don't have our names, we don't speak our true Arabic language, we're robbed of Islam, our true religion, and we've been made deaf, dumb, and blind in slavery. And Elijah Muhammad was taught by Allah, who we refer to as God, to teach us the truth that will free us. And when I heard it, I've been free ever since. I have no racial problems. I don't go where I'm not wanted. I'm proud, and Islam did it. So, and after these things that I heard in church, and preaching, and watching this and that, I knew something was wrong, and I couldn't think upon it. But as soon as I heard the truth that Elijah Muhammad teaches us in America, it made me accept it.
This is Africa Live. We have on the phone.
Welcome back to Africa Live, because this is that. I'm Javon G.
And I'm Daysoon True.
And we African internationalism did it for me. That's what did it for me. African internationalism, made me who I am today, changed my life, and also, helps me to change the world. It gives me a platform and the know-how in order to change the world. So today we're talking about on our second hour, 2 Americas. That's the topic of the show. I again want to thank Chairman O'Malley for coming in, calling in from St. Louis, and we just want to send a shout out to the St. Louis and Pedem branch, who they're having an engagement today, and you should go check that out if you can. If you are in St. Louis, and I think it will be live streamed, but I'll come back with the information, more information on that event in just 1 second. But I'm gonna kick it today soon. Uhuru.
As Javon stated, the topic today is 2 Americas, and to start, I'm gonna read from our 14-point platform, and I believe
who is R?
The African People's Socialist Party.
Yeah, that's us.
Yes. I believe that point 13 really speaks to this idea of 2 Americas. 13. We want an end to U.S. colonial domination of African people within the U.S. We believe that the primary struggle of African people within the U.S. during this period is to throw off the alien U.S. colonial domination, which is responsible for virtually every hardship imposed on Black people by this government that is identifiable as a Black problem. We believe that our problems with education, from our inability to control our own schools and determine the education of our own children, to the inferior and racist quality of the education we do receive, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with healthcare, from the absence of Black controlled and operated health clinics and institutions throughout our communities, to the hazardous health conditions imposed on us by poverty and callous government decisions, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with housing, from the unavailability of decent and adequate housing for the majority of our people, to the dilapidated and vermin-infested housing we are forced to live in, are caused by colonialism. We believe that our problems with food and clothing, from the terrible quality and quantity which are imposed on us by blood-sucking merchants, to our inability to produce and distribute them for among ourselves, are caused by colonialism, where our whole people is dominated and oppressed by foreign and alien state power for the purpose of economic exploitation and political advantage. That was point number 13 in our 14-point platform, the 14-point platform for the African People's Socialist Party.
Again, you know, that's what we believe, that's what we want, you know, as the African People's Socialist Party. And that we believe that colonialism is the basic root of everything. It is why it is the apple Adam ate, you know, that for our problems. It is that we need to overturn. And we're living in two Americas. We got two different Americas. You got America for white people, and you have an America for colonized people, Black people, the Mexicans, the so-called Indians, the indigenous people to this land. There's two Americas, two different places. You know, on one hand, white people live very great lives, life expectancies. You know, they can expect the future. You expect, you know, pensions, college education, and all this type of stuff. But when it comes to the colonized, you know, African people, it's not the same. We don't have the same expectations of a future. And this is what we're talking about in this hour. So just giving some specifics on this is Daysoon. You know, he's got it all calculated and planned. He the brains.
One of the things I think is interesting is something that just happened in the news with the case of the gorilla in the Cincinnati Zoo, and how when the gorilla was shot, white people came out of the woodworks, mourning, having protests at the zoo, and saying that gorilla lives matter, and all these other things. But when an African is gunned down in the street, no one bats an eye. It's just an example of these two Americas. And it's also interesting that the child or family in this case is an African family. And now, since the death of this gorilla, you have people coming out wanting to bring charges against the mother, and talk about the lack of parenting skills that the mother may have, and you know, and blaming everybody except for the fact to mention that the zoo is not the natural habitat for a gorilla itself.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. No. I'm just agreeing. You on the roll, man. Yeah. I'm just them my little my amen corner.
So it's just one of the things that happens when there's two Americas. I was also came across this video where this 4-year-old young white girl got on a bus, and she got on the bus and told the bus driver that all she wanted was a slushie. So here it is in the wee hours of the morning. This 4-year-old young white girl found her way on a bus and was on her way to get a slushie. The news picks up the story, and they just talks about how it's such a feel-good story that this little girl, all she wanted was a slushie. And at the end of the video, they made sure to announce that no charges will be brought up against the mother. It's just an example of what happens when there are two Americas. Is there anything you want to say?
I mean, I just want to say that is despicable, and you know, just like the case of the three drowned black girls here in St. Petersburg. Pinellas County sheriffs murdered those girls, and what they did, first thing that they do is put out the mug shots of the girls and criminalize the girls. But if it was white people, if it was white girls, it would have been a case of joyriding or something like that. It wouldn't be any criminal allegations or putting them in the light of criminals. They would been citizens that did the wrong thing, or was trying to have fun in their country and that type of stuff. So that's the two Americas that we're talking about. How could a little 4-year-old white girl get on a public bus in the wee hours of the morning, and there are no criminal charges brought on to the parents?
And there's no outrage about how this girl was out unsupervised in the middle of the night trying to find a slushie. Yeah, it was painted as a cute feel-good story about all she wanted was a slushie, not any charges or any thoughts of negligence or any of that stuff that's being brought up about this African mother and what happened with her child at the zoo.
And we have to, bring criticism to that, because we have to raise this and let the people know that this is a double standard. You know what I'm saying? And it's not necessarily like we care about what they feel about us, but we have to get power. We have to organize to get power. So when an African is doing something, just out of living, just makes a real, true, honest mistake, they're the book not thrown at them. We take care of our people and we make sure that their futures are set, and we're looking out for their best interests and not looking to exploit, oppress, and steal from them.
Uhuru, speaking of two Americas, I want to speak back to early March when I went to Flint, Michigan with the Africans Charged Genocide campaign that was being led by Impedum. And just talking to the residents in the community that was affected by this so-called water crisis, and noticing a trend, all pretty much of the families were African families. And not even maybe 2 to 5 minutes away, it was a white community. And you can see in this African community all the pain and suffering that was caused by this so-called water crisis. And like I said, not even 2 to 5 minutes away, it was business as usual for this all-white family. You seen people in restaurants enjoying themselves, walking up the street smiling, not a care in the world, because we live in two Americas. One, like Javon said, for white people, and two, for oppressed people. And they often show themselves, like in the case of Flint, Michigan. It was just amazing to really see what was going on, and how the residents felt like this was a deliberate attack. They felt like what was happening in their isolated community couldn't have just been circumstance. So that's just one of the points to it being two Americas.
It's shameful. Just this week's worth of information that came out the news and things like that. I haven't seen the video of the gorilla, but from the accounts that I've heard, that the gorilla was in a mode to protect. But that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that white people use this as a way to demonize us. What could an African have done better, in order to make sure that situation didn't happen? And it's nothing. We could have done better, but be white. That's the only thing that will shield us from these criticisms that white people are so willing to throw at us.
That's why I think it's so important that people find out about the African People's Socialist Party. It gives people a directions when they realize that, you know, this two Americas is affecting me, you know. It offers a solution, and it shows people all these contradictions that lie within the society. Like Javon was saying, you know, I remember seeing another article was talking about how now all of a sudden heroin and other drugs are health issues because they're beginning to trickle into white communities.
Right.
But as long as it stay in the Black community, you know, everything is okay. You know, the sun is still shining. But if any little thing trickles into the white community, now it's a problem. Oh, we must unite. Oh, we must find institutions and ways to help these individuals. But what all was happening when they was flooding the drugs into African communities?
Good point.
Where was the health concerns then?
It was a war on drugs at that time.
Yeah, it was a war on Africans.
Yeah. Thank you.
And essentially, that's how it is when it's two Americas. You know, they treat one like citizens, and they treat the other like conquered subjects.
And the point you made on the war on drugs or the war on Africans is that white people have a language that they speak, you know, that they understand when they talking to each other, you know, in the political realm and all that type of stuff. So they know, you know, back then they knew the war on drugs was the war on African people, because the government participating in flooding the African community with the drugs and creating an illegal economy that was, you know, that Bill Clinton used to use these laws and the illegal economy that they forced upon us to pass a bill that would just sweep Africans straight up off the street. You know, giving anything that, you know, if they did anything that the ruling class classified as wrong. And the fact of the matter is that the ruling class created the conditions of everything that Africans do to be wrong. You know, so the two Americas is shining through just in that fact. You know, Africans are not allowed to prosper. Africans are not allowed to build and get better, but we are allowed to be the tools of the white nation building up itself and maintaining the status quo and maintaining its power. And we have to understand that, and we have to organize, and that's why you need a revolutionary party that represents the African working class, because the African working class deserves to be in power, because the African working class is the reason why everything else is happening, why there is white power, because they steal everything from Africans and everything from the colonized people, and they use it to build up them. So that's why you have to participate, you know, in improving the white nation in order to gain any type of success, any type of recognition. And if you do achieve recognition and you're not forwarding the white agenda, then, you know, there will be a target on you.
Something I would like to speak to is this whole idea of how two Americas came into being. And that's through the theft of African people, as well as their land and resources, and other oppressed people around the world. It was able to create this vision because you didn't have one without the other. You didn't have this white power, this system of capitalism today without the rape and assault of Africa and African people. And that's why today in places like America, you see these different standards because although that relationship has been identified as something else, today that relationship still exists. And that's why I think it's so important for people to realize and recognize that in fact there are two Americas. And that's why this discussion is so important.
And we hear this phrase two Americas often, because we have an organization within our movement, white people who go into the white communities and go get reparations and there's black power in the white community and white face, basically, and they go spread the message of the fact that white people owe black people, African people, everything, and that is with it. I brought that up because we hear that often because the members of our movement who are white, you know, they're not getting pulled over by the police every stop sign or anytime. You know, they're not being harassed by the pigs in their neighborhoods, or you know, they don't even see the police in their neighborhoods. And so when they come to the African working class and see this, they seeing, you know, with their own eyes that there are two Americas. They understand that there are two Americas, and you know, we just advise, you know, those white people who look through rose-colored glasses or American-colored glasses and just believe that America is just, you know, hunky-dory place, which it might be for white people, but it's not for African people and indigenous people, Mexicans. It's not. And for white people to believe that the colonized are the problem is tremendously funny to me, because if it wasn't for the colonized indigenous Americans' land that was stolen, if it wasn't for the colonized labor stolen from Africa, then, you know, there would be no America. And truly, America would have no problems at all if white people hadn't stole land and people. And now they call them the people that they've displaced the problem. That makes no sense. You know, you should have stayed where you was at.
Uhuru. And right now we're gonna go into a little song break.
People are always quick to make assumptions and judge someone when they've never really been in that situation themselves. I'm just a spectator looking in. I can tell you how I think things should have been, and all the reasons why the world is where it is today. Please listen to my words, what I have to say. You see, in the past, they're fighting for land. You see, they need this land because it's a part of their plan. Understand, the Jews needed the place after Hitler, but they got about 3/4 of Palestinian land. Palestinians had to make refuge in places like Lebanon, places where none of them had ever thousands of massacres. But not believing, I do the same, kill me, I believe. Like 10 seconds ago,
Facebook keeps involved about the hour and a half, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to stop it right now before we start. So if you want to continue watching this, you know, uninterrupted, you can go to our YouTube channel. I put the link up in there. If not, you just wait for a little bit. Please share. You know, so everybody, you know, so they can get some understanding of what this world is, and they can actually participate in change. So I appreciate that. All right, so yeah, just check us out on our next one. All right, 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds. Who y'all?
Please listen to my words, what I have to say. I don't know everything and never will I claim to know what our purpose is and what we really need to grow. But I do know we're dying for a common cause, a global word that is well known. War. I've been to Africa and seen a grown man on the floor, disabled to the point I couldn't look anymore. A real beggar in a real state of poverty. But he prays every day, so he knows that there's gotta be another life where he can live as a strong man. And the ownership of Africa doesn't end up in the wrong hands, Western palms, buying and destroying people just to trade arms. Can someone tell me why Africa was just surviving? The whole land was a resource, plus they got diamonds. Used to be able to run your hand through the sand and get a handful of diamonds. Do you understand how precious is the land if it's like that? You see, it's wrong to say it was taken by the white man. It was taken by the power hungry and the people that never saw the beauty of Africa, and they only saw the money. To them it was the land of opportunity. It's terrorism when it's done by either you or me. Treat these words like my eulogy. I remember that I died being exactly what I choose to be. Inshallah, we all can see that God is the goodness in you and me. No religion has ownership. See the Quran and the Bible and the Torah all with ink. See, I think the masses are miseducated. See, most of the politicians were born racist. See, it's obvious that somehow we're all related. Millions of years back before we separated, I heard Tony Benn say it in a speech. See, how can you murder another brother because he's weak? Your ancestors could have been cousins, so take a seat and try and reason with your brother, fam, before you beef. I'm just a spectator looking in from my view. I'm not different or special, I'm just like you. Bleed blood and shed tears when my heart's hurting. I get energy from everything in life I'm learning. How to take my thoughts, release my stress, make my words. Make you visualize everything you've ever heard. Ancient Egyptians meditated to the elements, telepathically debating until the pirates came in the form of tradesmen. Promised them a paradise in exchange for a heaven. Temptation and misinterpretation, so they jeopardized the whole of the nations. You see, a paradise is where we might choose to go, but a heaven is the place where the angels go, so they can reason with the prophets, not bathe in gold. And it's not late for no one to save your soul. I'm a citizen of truth, love, and loyalty. Every person on the planet is royal. These are my thoughts, how I look at things. I'm just a spectator looking in. That's all I can really do. I can only give you my interpretation of any subject. I'm just a spectator looking in.
Uhuru, that was Logic with Spectator from the UK. And today we're talking about two Americas and the effects it has on African people. Right now, I would like to talk a little bit about some of the tactics that are used in this war on Africa and Africans. And I want to just read what the definition of psychological warfare is. Actions intended to reduce an opponent's morale. And some of those things that are used are different variations of propaganda. I'm just going to list a few, and then Javon and I can discuss some of these issues. Some of these uses of propaganda is the television. The television is a huge tool that's used to control the masses, as well as music. Music is also a huge tool that's used to control the masses. And these news programs, whether it be televised news, radio news, or news that you read in the newspaper. So Javon, would you like to discuss any of these?
Yeah, just, as the African People's Socialist Party Director of Agitation and Propaganda, I have a special relationship with propaganda, and it going back through history, as far as revolutions are concerned, the propagandists have always been very important in getting the ideas out there. Got to understand that the only thing that makes up this world is really just ideas, basically, and your ideas have to get out there. Whoever has the capability to get their brand of ideas out usually could really have a great influence on the world. And this is what's happening in our situation. The imperialists, the white power, they have gotten out all the ideas. It's a superstructure that supports slavery, basically, or the oppression. Something you got to understand, that this economy, this social system was born off of the oppression of slavery. Of slaves, of African people. This whole capitalist system was because white people had slaves and they ventured out and stole us. So all the propaganda speaks to that relationship. All the propaganda has to reinforce this relationship and has to make America seem, have to make the oppressed feel like they're part of this so-called nation. And the oppressed is not. The oppressed is part of the oppressed nation, and the oppressor nation is the oppressors, and don't get it twisted. It's simple as that. And if you're getting shot down in the middle of the streets by the police, who controls the police? It's not the oppressed nation. It's the oppressor nation that controls the police. So you got to see where you are on what side. But when you talk about, as we was talking about the propaganda and ideas, it has to support this relationship that came into existence because Europe decided to assault Africa and bring free African people over here and make them work for their interests. So that's when you understand in the propaganda, go back to that relationship and see if that is being reinforced.
Uhuru. A quote just came to my mind is that powerful people cannot afford to educate those in which they oppress. And it speaks to Americas, and that the dominating and ruling class, they control all outlets of media, whether the TV, the music, and the news, the major news corporations. And oftentimes, these entities are what educate us. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we spend a lot of time in front of the television watching programs that are in place to reinforce an ideology that doesn't work in our interest. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we sit around and listen to music that is in place to reinforce an ideology that doesn't speak to our needs. Mm-hmm. And like Javon stated, the news, whenever you see an incident where police kill an African, the first thing they want to try to find and do is dig up some dirt on the victim. They want to paint the officer in the light of a hero. They always go find like his academy photo where he's sitting there smiling, and they post that picture. And they trying to find a demonizing photo of an African. And that's what happens when you live in an oppressor nation, and the oppressor controls the media outlets. They control the stories. They control the narrative. That's why it's so important to be able to combat all this negative propaganda with positive propaganda, propaganda that speaks to being an African internationalist. Mm-hmm. That's why it's important to read Your Burning Spear. That's why it's important to watch what's on Uhuru TV. And that's why it's extremely important that we support Black Power 96, because Black Power 96 is a tool for the African people, for the African working class. It's going to speak to the needs of the African working class. It's going to play music that's uplifting, music that shows people where to go and what to do, and not all about destroying themselves. So that's why it's important that we all contribute in the building of our Black Power 96 radio station.
Uhuru, to shamelessly promote Africa Live and Black Power 96. Africa Live will be on Black Power 96 FM radio here in St. Petersburg. So it's going to be more, hearing this on the airways, when you get off the freeway and you can tune, or you on the freeway and you hearing this as you entering St. Pete, or you entering the African community, you hearing Daysoon and myself talk about the crisis of imperialism and bring weapons to our people, ideology. I knew I was going to mess up that word, but bring weapons of ideas to our people. And that's something that's powerful. That's powerful. No other movement organization can really say that. and then the fact that we have the express intent to wield power, to govern ourselves, and that's what we're doing, and this is state power, you know, a form of exercising state power in the working class Africans' hands. So it's very, very important that everyone support Black Power 96, and if you want to support Black Power 96 and make sure that Africa Live is on there, and we're, you know, broadcast to the world and syndicated. You know, you got the Steve Harvey show syndicated, but what type of buffoonery is that? You got the Tom Joyner, you know, I think he's, you know, whatever, but you have all these types of radio outlets with African people who heads them, and they have no interest in Africans wielding power as a nation, but they have more of an interest to make sure that they keep their position, you know, intact with white power, so they don't suffer the same fate as the working class Africans. So Black Power 96, go to blackpower96.org. Please take a bank. We're not asking you to just donate. We're asking you to participate in your own radio station, and you can save the change the airways. Also, send your music, join the team.
Uhuru. I want to get back to discussing some of the tactics that are used in the war on us as African people. And one of the main things is this educational system that, you know, we all take part in. One of the main things within this educational system in regards to the two Americas is that it sets up to reinforce white people and how they're taught to be superior. And it reinforces African people to be subjects to this system. So education and the way that we're taught is in such a way to reinforce these two Americas. So I just want to speak a little bit on education. Javon, what is your feelings on education?
That's funny that you speak about education, because we had a conversation with Chimamanda Waller of the African People's Socialist Party earlier this week, and he just broke down what education was as it relates to Africans, or, you know, let's say the colonized and the colonizer, or the oppressor nation and the oppressed nation. Basically, what education is a tool for the oppressor nation to educate you and reinforce your oppression, and make it seem good, make it seem right, you know, make it seem normal for you to be in these conditions, so you can just react to this relationship without fighting. Basically, you go to school to learn how to be a genius slave. You know, the more degrees you get, you know, as you go first kindergarten, first grade, you know, you've achieved a better level of enslavement. You know.
Also, I want to speak on something you said about Chimamanda, which stays in my mind, is that this idea of forcing people, especially African people, to feel like they are a part of this oppressor nation. He gave a story about how his son would not do the Pledge of Allegiance, because Chimamanda educated his son on what that meant. So just to think about how it seems so innocent that, you know, we go to ball games, we stand up and we pledge allegiance. Every day before we even taught a math problem in school, we stand up and we pledge allegiance to this oppressor nation. So, you know, I just thought that's important to teach our children, because the current educational system is not going to teach our children how to free themselves. Because once again, powerful people cannot afford to teach the people in which they oppress. So I just want to speak to that really quickly when you brought Chimamanda.
Oh yeah, and I just want to keep I unite with that quote so much, and I'm so glad you said it again. You know, that is the absolute truth. You know, we as the Uhuru movement, we're looking to educate our own. We have a child care collective out of St. Louis, and looking to broaden that throughout the country. or the U.S., whatever. And so we're taking, as the Uhuru movement, we're taking, doing everything in our power to control our lives: food, clothes, shelter, education, health. That's what we're doing, and we most certainly could use your participation in this. And if you would like to be a part of the Uhuru movement, you can go to joinapsp.org and get started in the process. And I encourage you to do so, because in doing so, you will realize that you're going to be in the right place. You know that you're going to change the world. Living a whole different way of life, and then from what the imperialist values are. What they make us do. So you watch that colonialism right out. So join apsp.org.
Uhuru. Also, I want to touch back on why I chose point number 13 in our 14-point platform of the African People's Socialist Party. Is because it spoke to the lack of education, the inadequate health care, and our problems with housing and food, all have the same root, which is colonialism. All these so-called ideas of what it is to have a black problem in America, and all these things that they feel are, it just happens to black people because just the way it is, or it always been this way. We can tie it all to colonialism, and it's a tool. All these things are tools that are in place to keep things the way that they are. So the people have to become aware and recognize that colonialism must be destroyed. And there's no black issue that can be overturned without destroying capitalism and colonialism. So yeah, I want to read another point on our platform, which also speaks to part of the war that is raged on African people, and that's with these prison systems. And that's point 6 and 7. But I'm gonna start with point 6, and it's: we want the immediate and unconditional release of all black people who are presently locked down in U.S. prisons. We believe that all the African men and women who are locked down in the U.S. concentration camps, commonly known as prisons, are there due to decisions, laws, and circumstances which were created by aliens and foreigners for their own benefit and as a means of genocidal colonialist control. We believe that these decisions, laws, and circumstances were created and are enforced without our consent and are therefore illegitimate. We believe that the African men and women who are locked down in these concentration camps are victims of U.S. colonialist ruling class justice, which maintains our enslavement and terrorizes our people, and that they should therefore be released immediately to the just representative of our struggle for liberation, independence, and socialist democracy. Uhuru. And also, point number 7, it's also very important. We want the complete amnesty for all African political prisoners and prisoners of war from U.S. prisons, or their immediate release to any friendly country which will accept them and give them political asylum. We believe that U.S. prisons are also used as the illegitimate tool for torturing, murdering, and holding captive those courageous daughters and sons of Africa who, through their patriotic deeds or spoken or written words in support of the cause of our liberation, have become political prisoners and prisoners of war. We believe, along with the majority of the peoples of the world, that it's the duty of the colonized and enslaved to resist slavery and colonialism and to fight for socialism, and those who do so are patriots and heroines and heroes and should be held to the highest esteem. Uhuru.
Free them all.
And also, can you touch on that letter that you received earlier?
Oh yeah. I read a letter earlier this week. If you go on Facebook, go on Facebook and you can see the letter that we read. I think it was, that's it. Thank you so much. And I read a letter from a prisoner. Our movement the Uhuru movement has the Burning Spear newspaper, which you also should subscribe to, and get this information right in your hands, right in your doorstep. But our newspaper, the Burning Spear newspaper, gives free subscriptions to any of our political prisoners or any African captive held captive by the U.S. government against their will, because we believe that we're not supposed to be over here in the first place for white people to put their hands on us and just do what they will with us. So we had a letter from one of our prisoner subscribers, and you can sponsor a prisoner too. Just go to theburningspear.com, go to the Spear, and you can sponsor a prisoner and make sure that all our prisoners or all African captives within the this U.S. border has a spear, something to stab imperialism with, and protect themselves and protect their minds and ideas, and their revolutionary. So, but this is from, I'm not going to say his name because I'm not sure the repercussions that might come from this, but he states, Mr. Omali Ishatella, I write to follow up on my last correspondence, also to express how determined and persistent I am to end this injustice that has plagued my life for over 3 decades. The man been in prison for 3 decades. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can go on to our Facebook where we did an impromptu live presentation. Was that Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that? Thursday, and you can read, see, view, and hear the whole letter. But we're running out of time, and I just want to appreciate everyone for being on here, man. Facebook is we went kind of viral with 700 views and over 7,000 people reached and that type of stuff. So I want to thank Facebook, and I want to thank everybody who's listening on uhururadio.com. I want to thank the chairman for coming in and giving an amazing summation of Muhammad Ali's life that you're not going to hear nowhere else. So share everything that we have, because we are here to give this to our people, and it's not nothing that we want to hold on to, and we want you to have it, and we don't want you to hold on to it either. Each one teach one Africa, one nation. Uhuru. Uhuru. I mean, we got a song going out.
Yeah. Just want, like Javon said, just want to thank everybody for listening, everybody on Facebook for commenting and viewing. Yeah, Uhuru.
Uhuru, and we getting admirers of the bald-headed one on Facebook. Uhuru, thank you. Keep listening, keep watching. Uhuru.
I like this song as an outro.
Uhuru, y'all. Thank y'all for watching.
Somebody showing me for love.
Yeah, somebody showing you love, man. I'm trying to get to it. It's a message.
So love too, man.
Hey, Kimberly, thank you for making his day. You know what I'm saying? I would show you my bald head, but I don't want to think we competing, or I'm jealous. But I ain't jealous. No, not really. Thank you, Kimberly, though.
Thank you, Kimberly.
She want to talk to you, man.
I'm not gonna say much. I don't want to get in trouble. Thank you, Kimberly, for that amazing compliment.
Uhuru. Be out, y'all.